The gate hadn't opened for visitors in 2 years. So when Samuel Hartwell saw the woman standing there, Boy's hand clutched in hers, snow dusting her shoulders like ash, he almost didn't answer. Almost sent them away. But his daughter was watching from the window, and 7-year-old eyes see things grown men forget. Inside the kitchen, morning moved like a funeral. Samuel poured cold coffee into 2 cups, one for him, one for Willa. The third chair sat empty, had been empty since Martha died. They ate in silence, the way grief teaches you to. No words needed. They'd perfected surviving, not living. The knock came soft but insistent. Samuel opened the door to find a woman near his own age, maybe younger, with exhaustion carved into her face. Her coat was thin. Her boy's shoes were wrapped in cloth. But her spine was straight, her voice steady. "I can work," she said. "Mending, cleaning, anything. I need to feed my son through winter." Samuel's jaw tightened. He hadn't allowed help since Martha passed. Strangers meant conversation, questions, feeling things he'd buried deep. But this woman's eyes carried something he recognized, the exhaustion of someone who'd forgotten hope existed. "I don't need help, ma'am." "Maybe not, but I need work. And your fence there says otherwise." She pointed to the split rail hanging loose near the barn. Samuel followed her gaze. She was right. Everything on this ranch was coming apart, piece by piece, just like him, behind him. Willa appeared in the doorway. She stared at the boy with open curiosity. The boy, maybe 6 years old, stared back. Neither spoke. But something passed between them. The recognition children have when they spot another soul carrying adult-sized burdens. 1 week, Samuel heard himself say, "Kitchen and fence, that's all." The woman nodded once. "I'm Ruth Winslow. This is Toby." "Samuel Hartwell, my daughter. Willa?" Ruth crossed the threshold carefully, as if testing ice. The gate swung shut behind her, but didn't latch. The metal catch rusted from disuse. She didn't notice. Samuel did. Out here. A man's word is his bond, even when his heart's trying to break it. Willa took Toby's hand without asking and led him toward the barn. Ruth watched them go, something cracking in her chest. Samuel saw it, recognized it. They were both learning the same hard lesson: some wounds don't heal. You just get better at carrying them. "Coffee's on the stove," Samuel said, then walked away before she could see his hands shake. By sundown, Ruth Winslow had mended 3 shirts, scrubbed a month's worth of grime from the kitchen floor, and made the house smell like something other than grief. Samuel watched her hands shake as she worked, not from cold, but from fear she wasn't good enough to stay. He recognized that fear. He'd worn it himself. The kitchen fire crackled. First time in weeks he'd bothered to build it proper. Outside. The sun broke through clouds briefly, then hid again. Winter wasn't done with Montana yet. Might never be done with him. Ruth worked like she was proving worth. Not living. Every task executed with quiet desperation. She counted her coins 3 times when she thought he wasn't looking. Her fingers trembled around the broom handle. "You'll be back tomorrow?" Samuel asked as she prepared to leave. "If you'll have me." He nodded toward the coins in her hand. "Then leave the worry here tonight." She didn't understand. He could see confusion flicker across her face. "You asked for work to feed your son," Samuel said slowly. "I'll give you that. But let me teach you hope first. Can't mend a fence if your hands won't stop shaking." Ruth's eyes filled. She turned away fast, but not fast enough. Nobody had offered her mercy in so long. She'd forgotten what it looked like. "And why would you teach me hope?" Her voice barely a whisper. "Because I forgot it too. Maybe we both need the lesson." From the barn came the sound of children laughing. Not loud. Not wild, just the soft sound of 2 young souls finding momentary peace in kittens and hay. Willa appeared in the doorway, Toby behind her. "Papa, can Toby come back tomorrow?" It was the first full sentence his daughter had spoken to him in weeks. Samuel's throat tightened. He looked at Ruth. Saw her watching Willa with something like wonder. If his mama says yes? Ruth nodded. Couldn't speak. Just nodded. Samuel walked to the shelf and lit the kitchen lamp first time since Martha died. The flame flickered, uncertain but steady. Shadows retreated to the corners. The house remembered. Just for a moment. What warmth felt like. Ruth watched from the doorway. Something cracking open inside her chest. Something that hurt and healed at the same time. Coffee's weak. But it's honest, like most folks ought to be. She gathered Toby, wrapped her thin coat tight, and walked toward town, behind her. Lamplight spilled gold across the snow. She didn't look back. If she did, she might believe. And believing hurt worse than hoping, but she would return tomorrow. They both knew it. Samuel stood in the doorway long after she disappeared. The lamp burned steady. For the first time in 2 years, the house didn't feel like a tomb. Maybe that was dangerous. Maybe that was exactly what he needed. On the third morning, Samuel woke to the smell of coffee, real coffee, strong and dark, the way Martha used to make it, for one heartbeat. He forgot she was gone. Then memory returned, sharp as winter wind, but the coffee was still hot. And Ruth Winslow was humming in his kitchen. He dressed slowly, listening. The tune was unfamiliar but gentle, the kind of song a mother sings without thinking, the kind that makes a house feel like a home. When he entered the kitchen, Ruth was braiding Willa's hair while his daughter ate breakfast. Her fingers moved with practiced ease, weaving the dark strands into a neat plait. Martha used to braid exactly like that, 3-strand, right over left, tucking the loose ends just so. Samuel's chest tightened. This wasn't the plan. Willa caught sight of him and smiled genuinely, freely for the first time in 2 years. Ruth glanced up, fingers never stopping their work. "Morning," she said simply. "Morning." Outside, icicles dripped, first hint of thaw. Inside, something else was melting too, and Samuel wasn't sure he had the strength to stop it. The day passed in quiet rhythms. Ruth worked, Samuel worked. The children played in the barn, their laughter drifting through cracks in the walls. By evening, exhaustion settled like dust. But it was the good kind, the kind that comes from living, not just surviving. That night, tucking Willa into bed, Samuel felt her small hand grip his. "Papa, why is Miss Ruth sad?" He paused, surprised. "What makes you think she's sad?" "Her eyes, they look like yours did, before she came. Out of the mouths of babes. Same reason we are. I reckon she lost someone too." Willa considered this, then asked the question that would change everything. "Can we keep her? She makes the house warm again?" Samuel had no answer. He kissed his daughter's forehead and retreated to the kitchen, where Ruth was finishing the last of the dishes. She moved to leave, gathering her coat. "Stay for supper tomorrow," he said before he could stop himself. "Both of you." Ruth turned, eyes searching his face. "Samuel, I don't want to impose. You're not. We are. On your kindness, let us return it." She hesitated. He could see the war in her expression, want versus fear, hope versus history. "All right," she said finally. "We'll come." Samuel walked her to the gate. She carried Toby on her hip, the boy already half asleep. Stars were visible for the first time in weeks, scattered across the black Montana sky like seeds waiting to grow. The gate swung open easier tonight, hinges remembering motion. "Thank you," Ruth said softly, "for the work, for everything. Thank you for reminding me what coffee's supposed to taste like." She smiled, small, but real. Then she was gone. Footsteps crunching through snow toward town. Samuel stood in the cold, watching until she disappeared. The land don't lie. Neither should a man, especially about what his heart needs. He needed this. Willa needed this. Maybe Ruth and Toby needed this too. He didn't go inside immediately. Just stood there under the stars, feeling something he hadn't felt in 2 years. Possibility. Dangerous, terrifying possibility. 4 people at a table meant for 6. But it felt full for the first time in years. Toby asked about the horses. Willa interrupted with stories about barn kittens. Ruth and Samuel passed bread and beans and something neither could name but both recognized. Hope. Maybe. Or the beginning of it. "Can I really ride the mare?" Toby asked, eyes wide. "If your mama says yes, and you listen close to what I teach you." Ruth nodded, unable to speak around the lump in her throat. When had someone last asked her permission to teach her son something good? Willa reached across the table and squeezed Ruth's hand. Just that. No words. Children understand what adults forget. Sometimes touch says everything words can't. After supper, the children ran to the barn. Samuel and Ruth cleared dishes in comfortable silence. Their hands brushed, reaching for the same plate. Both pulled back too soon. Too fast. But the electricity lingered. Awareness shifted. "You don't have to help clean." Ruth said, "Neither do you. But here we are." She smiled. He realized he liked making her smile. Liked it more than was probably safe. Days blurred into routine. Ruth arrived each morning before dawn, stayed until after supper. She taught Willa to knead bread while Samuel watched from the workshop. They mended fence together, working in companionable silence. Evening ritual emerged without planning children to bed, then coffee by the fire. One night, reaching for the same log, their hands brushed again. This time, neither pulled away quite as fast. Samuel. "I know." They didn't finish the conversation. Didn't need to. Some truths are too fragile to speak aloud. But the next day at the general store, reality intruded. "Saw Ruth Winslow heading your way again." "Samuel," Jed Murphy said. Voice carrying. "Mighty regular, that." Samuel's jaw tightened. Small towns talk. He'd forgotten that. Or maybe he'd just stopped caring. "She's helping with the house. I'm sure she is." The insinuation hung thick. Samuel paid for his supplies and left. But the seed was planted. People were watching. People were judging. That night, Willa asked the question before bed. "Papa, will Miss Ruth stay forever?" His throat went tight. "That's not for me to decide." "Darling, why not your grown-ups? You can decide anything." From the doorway came Ruth's soft voice. Neither had known she was there. "Maybe it is." Samuel's heart stopped. Ruth met his eyes across the room. In hers, he saw the same fear, the same want, the same terrible hope. Home ain't a place. It's the people you'd ride through hell to get back to. He was starting to understand what that meant. After Willa drifted off, Samuel walked Ruth to the gate. The night was clear, stars brilliant. "People are talking," he said. "I know. Does it bother you? Should it bother you?" He considered. "Used to. Don't know if it does anymore." They stood in silence, breath misting in cold air. The space between them hummed with everything unsaid. "Good night, Samuel." "Good night, Ruth." She walked away. He watched until lamplight from her boarding room window flickered on in town. Then he went inside, lay awake until dawn, and wondered when exactly he'd started falling. Some truths only come out in darkness. Ruth had been carrying hers for 3 years, ever since the mine collapse took her husband and the town. Decided it was his fault. Samuel had been carrying his for 2 ever since he came home to find Martha already gone. Last words unsaid. Tonight. The storm outside gave permission to let the storms inside finally speak. Children were asleep. Fire burned low. Wind howled against the windows. First thunder of early spring rumbling in the distance. The house felt small, intimate, safe enough for confession. "My husband died in a mining accident," Ruth said suddenly. She'd been staring into the fire, coffee gone cold in her hands. "Cave in. They said he was reckless. Maybe he was. Maybe he was just desperate to provide." Samuel said nothing, just listened. The town blamed him, and me, by extension, for marrying a reckless man, for not stopping him, for surviving when he didn't. Her voice cracked. "I've been running ever since, town to town, work to work. Never staying, never settling, because staying means people asking questions, means judgment." "Is that what you think you'll find here?" Samuel asked quietly. "I don't know what I'll find here." Thunder rolled closer. Rain began, soft and hard, hammering the roof. "I wasn't here when Martha died," Samuel said. The words came rough, unpracticed. "Driving cattle to Miles City, 200 miles. She got sick while I was gone. Fever took her in 3 days." He swallowed hard. "Came home to a grave already dug. Never said goodbye. Never told her." His voice broke. Ruth's hand found his across the table, covered it, held it. "Never told her I was sorry," he finished. "For leaving, for not being there, for failing." "You didn't fail." "Feels like I did." "Grief makes liars of us all," Ruth said softly. "Makes us think we failed when we were just human." They sat like that, hands clasped, storms raging inside and out, not filling the silence with empty words. Just being present, being seen, being known. When the storm finally passed, Ruth rose to leave. Samuel walked her to the door. She turned, looked up at him. "Do you think Martha would mind," she whispered, "us? This?" He considered, really considered. "I think she'd mind me teaching our daughter that love only happens once. That feels like a lie." Ruth's eyes filled. She nodded once, then slipped into the night. Samuel watched her go, then noticed Willa standing at the top of the stairs, owl-eyed and observant. "You heard, Papa. You smiled today, like before Mama went to heaven. Did I? You did." "Miss Ruth makes you smile." She padded back to bed, leaving Samuel alone with the truth a 7-year-old could see, but he'd been too afraid to admit. Later, in the barn, he found Martha's old shawl where he'd kept it folded in a trunk, held it to his face. It didn't smell like her anymore, just like wool and time. Sometimes the bravest thing is to stay even when running feels safer. He folded the shawl carefully and put it back. When he left the barn, he saw it one wildflower pushing through melting snow near the door. Tiny, defiant, alive. Spring was coming, whether he was ready or not. Ruth should have known better than to think mercy was contagious. She'd walked into church beside Samuel and his daughter 3 weeks of them becoming a family and felt the frost return. Not outside. Inside every pew, every stare, every whisper that cut sharper than Montana wind. They sat in Samuel's usual row, third from the front, Willa between them, Toby on Ruth's other side. The children seemed oblivious to the tension, but Ruth felt every eye boring into her back. "Too soon," someone whispered behind her. "Poor Martha, barely cold in her grave." What kind of woman moves into a widower's home? Ruth's spine stiffened. She'd heard it all before. Different town, same judgment. She should have known. Should have protected herself better. The service passed in a blur, afterward, as people filed out. Ruth moved quickly toward the wagon, but Samuel was stopped by Walter Hale, the church elder, a good man, probably, but with the kind of concern that felt like condemnation. "Samuel, we need to talk." Ruth kept walking, but Hale's voice meant to carry. "We understand loneliness, but propriety matters. The children are watching. The town is watching. What message does this send? Ruth's hands clenched. She lifted Toby into the wagon. Then Willa kept her face neutral, empty. She'd perfected this mask years ago. Samuel's response was too quiet to hear. But when he reached the wagon, his jaw was tight, eyes distant. They rode home in silence. That afternoon, Ruth began packing. "What are you doing?" Samuel stood in the kitchen doorway. "What I should have done before it got this far." "Ruth, I won't be the scandal that ruins your daughter's name." She folded a shirt with shaking hands. "I've been the scandal before. I won't do it to Willa. Or you. Nobody said. They didn't have to. I heard it, so did you." Samuel opened his mouth, closed it. The silence stretched, and in that silence, Ruth heard everything she needed to know. He wasn't fighting, wasn't arguing, wasn't choosing. Fear had won. "It's better this way," she said, voice steady despite the breaking inside. "You'll see. Papa, why is Miss Ruth leaving?" They both turned. Willa stood in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. Behind her, Toby clutched a wooden horse Samuel had carved for him. "Did we do something wrong?" Willa's voice cracked. "No, darling." Ruth knelt, pulled the girl close. "You did everything right. You're perfect. This is grown-ups being complicated." "That's a lie." Willa pulled back, glaring at her father. "Papa, you're scared. You're letting her go because you're scared." 7 years old, and she saw straight through to the truth. Samuel said nothing, just stood there, gutted and silent. Ruth gathered her things, took Toby's hand, walked to the gate with as much dignity as she could gather. The gate that had opened so easily just days ago now felt heavy, final. She didn't look back. If she did, she'd stay. And staying would only hurt more later, behind her. The gate swung shut, latched. The sound echoed like a coffin closing. Inside the house, Samuel stood at the window. Willa wouldn't look at him. The lamp flickered once, twice, went dark. Winter had returned, interior and exterior. A man can face down wolves easier than wagging tongues. But Samuel Hartwell had just proven he wasn't that kind of man. Not yet. 3 days without Ruth felt like 3 years. The house remembered how to be a grave. Willa wouldn't speak, wouldn't eat more than a few bites. She moved through the rooms like a ghost, accusing him with every silent glance. Supper was cold beans and bitterness. Samuel tried to work, tried to focus, but everywhere he looked, he saw evidence of Ruth the mended shirts, the clean floors, the bread she'd taught Willa to make. The house was cleaner than it had been in 2 years, and lonelier than it had ever been. On the third evening, Willa appeared beside him with something clutched in her small fist. Martha's handkerchief, the one he'd kept in a drawer. Couldn't bear to look at. "Mama would be sad you're sad again," Willa said. Voice small but certain. "She'd want you happy. She told me so. Before she left." Samuel's throat closed. Willa was barely 5 when Martha died. How much could she really remember? But children remember what matters. They remember love. "Papa, you told Miss Ruth that love doesn't only happen once, but then you acted like it does." Out of the mouths of babes? That night, after Willa finally slept, Samuel saddled his horse and rode to the hill where Martha was buried. Simple wooden cross, her name carved careful. He'd visited every week for 2 years, then stopped when Ruth arrived. He knelt in the grass, still brown but showing hints of green underneath. "I thought keeping you close meant keeping everyone else away," he said aloud. "But that's not love. Martha, that's fear. And I'm teaching our daughter to be afraid of living." The wind answered, soft and steady. "She needs a mother. I need I need to stop dying. Need to choose life. Is that betrayal? The stars offered no judgment, just light and darkness. I think you'd like Ruth. She's strong, scared, like me, but strong underneath, and she makes Willa smile. That's got to count for something. He stood, brushed grass from his knees, made a choice. The boarding house in town was easy to find, only one that would take a woman and child. Single room, 3rd floor. Samuel climbed the stairs, knocked softly. Ruth opened the door. Her face when she saw him, hope and fear warring so visibly it hurt to witness. Samuel, I was wrong. The words came fast, urgent. Willa was right. I was scared. Of judgment. Of forgetting Martha. Of living. But turns out, staying alive is braver than staying frozen. And when they judge Willa for having me there, then I teach her what you taught me hope first. And that love doesn't run out just because you use it twice. Ruth's eyes filled. Behind her, Toby stirred on the narrow bed. One condition, she whispered. We do this right. No hiding. No shame. Agreed. She gathered their few belongings. They rode back together, 4 on 2 horses, the children bundled between them. Rain started halfway home, soaking them through. But Samuel felt warmer than he'd been in years. When they reached the ranch, Willa was waiting on the porch. She flew down the steps, threw herself into Ruth's arms. You came back. I came back. And Papa's not going to be scared anymore. Ruth looked at Samuel over his daughter's head. He managed a small smile. I'm terrified, but I'm here anyway. Good, Willa said fiercely. That's what brave means. They went inside. Samuel lit every lamp in the house. The darkness retreated, reluctant but defeated. Mercy arrives quiet. Like first snow, you don't see it coming, but suddenly the world's made clean. He'd been living in winter for 2 years. Time to remember what spring felt like. Walking into that church felt like walking into a windstorm, everyone staring, nobody moving. Silence so thick you could drown in it. But Samuel Hartwell had his daughter's hand in his right, Ruth's in his left, and for the first time in 2 years, he knew exactly where he stood. They took their seats. 3rd row, same as always. The whispers started immediately, but Samuel didn't flinch. Beside him, Ruth sat straight-backed, chin high. Willa and Toby flanked them like bookends. A family. Messy. Unconventional. Terrifying. But a family. Walter Hale approached after the service. Face stern. The congregation pressed closer. Vultures sensing confrontation. Samuel stood before the elder could speak. I know what you're thinking, he said. Voice carrying clear. Too soon. Improper. Poor Martha. But here's what I know: Martha loved our daughter more than breath. And she'd want Willa to grow up in a house full of light. Not a tomb. Ruth brought that light back. And I'm grateful. He turned to face the congregation. Some looked uncomfortable. Some nodded slightly. Most just stared. If that offends you, I'm sorry. But I'm not sorry enough to choose death over life. Not anymore. Silence held for 3 heartbeats. Then Martha Doyle Walter's wife. 70 if she was a day stood from her pew. Walter Hale, you old fool. Her voice cracked like a whip. I've watched Samuel die slow for 2 years. Watched that little girl forget how to smile. If this woman and her boy bring them back, who are we to judge? She turned to the congregation. Martha wouldn't. She'd be grateful someone loved her family enough to stay. Another voice joined in. Ada Harper, young widow whose husband died last year. My husband's been gone 8 months. Everyone says time heals, but you know what does choosing to live anyway? She looked at Ruth. Welcome. Others nodded. Not everyone, but enough. The frost was cracking. After the service, Ruth was invited to the quilting circle. Toby and Willa raced off with other children toward the creek. Small victories. Hard won. The ride home was quiet but different, settled. The children dozed in the wagon bed. Samuel and Ruth sat side by side, shoulders touching. "Still scared?" she asked softly. "Terrified. You. Every day. Good. Means we're alive." The ranch came into view. Smoke curled from the chimney he'd left the fire burning. Lamplight glowed in the kitchen window. Willa had insisted on lighting it before they left. Home. Not the house he'd shared with Martha, not a replacement, but something new, something earned through courage and choice. Ruth reached over, squeezed his hand. He squeezed back. The only thing harder than breaking a horse is breaking your own stubborn heart. But worth it. God. Worth it. They pulled into the yard. Willa woke, stretched, smiled. Toby blinked sleepy eyes and asked if he could see the kittens. Normal, ordinary, sacred. Samuel helped Ruth down from the wagon. Their hands lingered. "Thank you," she said, "for standing. Thank you for giving me something worth standing for." They went inside together. The lamp burned steady. The house was warm. And for the first time in 2 years, Samuel Hartwell let himself believe in tomorrow. Spring came late to Montana that year, but when it arrived, it came with force wildflowers blanketing pastures, garden rows neat and promising, children's laughter ringing clear as church bells. The ranch remembered how to live. So did the man who owned it. 6 weeks had passed since that Sunday. 6 weeks of rebuilding, replanting, relearning what hope tasted like. Morning light poured through the kitchen window. Coffee brewed strong and dark. Bread baked in the oven, filling the house with warmth. Ruth and Samuel moved around each other with practiced ease, not replacing what was, but building what is. "Hand me that plate." "Here." "Thank you." Simple. Ordinary. Everything. Outside. Willa taught Toby to ride the gentlest mare. Both children sun-browned and muddy, voices bright with joy. Ruth watched from the window, heart full to bursting. "They look happy," Samuel said. Coming up behind her. "They are." "So do you." She turned, met his eyes. "So do you." He smiled. The real kind. The kind that reached his eyes. Been thinking. Dangerous. About making this permanent. Legal. So Toby has my name. Willa has a mother. And I have you. Ruth's breath caught. You asking that badly, apparently? Then I'm saying yes, badly. They stood in the kitchen, sunlight streaming around them, future spreading out like the Montana sky wide. Wild. Worth every moment of fear it took to reach it. That evening, they gathered on the porch. All four. Willa braided Ruth's hair while Ruth braided Toby's. Samuel whittled a new toy horse, shavings curling at his feet. Somewhere in the pasture, a meadowlark sang. "Papa," Willa asked. Mama would be happy. I think she's smiling." Samuel's throat tightened. He looked at Ruth. She smiled gentle, knowing, grateful. "I think so too, darling." The lamp burned in the window. The gate stood open. The garden promised harvest. And in the distance, wildflowers swayed in evening breeze. Sometimes the longest journey is from your head to your heart, but it's the only one that matters. Samuel had taken that journey. So had Ruth, and they'd arrived at the same place home. Not the home he'd lost, not the home she'd fled, but the home they'd built together from broken pieces and stubborn hope. The frost had broken. The gate stood open, and the lamp after 2 years of darkness burned steady through the night. Not happily ever after, but hopefully ever after. Which, out here on the frontier, was the only promise that mattered.